E.N.D here. If you are carefully following the spoilers for Innistrad Midnight Hunt, and I hope you're enjoying my coverage of this set spoiler season, by now you're aware that in this new Innistrad set, werewolves will have a new mechanic called DAYBOUND, NIGHTBOUND, which will determine the transformation of these cards. But how do you play DAYBOUND, NIGHTBOUND cards? First, what is DAYBOUND, NIGHTBOUND? DAYBOUND and NIGHTBOUND are triggered abilities tied to the number of spells casted by the active player, with the effect being activating day or night designations, thus allowing the cards to be transformed at the beginning of the next turn. Let's start our tutorial. When the game starts, it's neither day nor night. Now we're going to cast a spell with DAYBOUND. We're going to cast Brutal Qatar. Brutal Qatar, 2 and 1 white. Let's cast it. Once you cast Brutal Qatar, it goes on this stack. Once on the stack, there can be a counter, there can be a response. If there was no counter or any other response, it will hit the battlefield. When a creature with DAYBOUND, like Brutal Qatar, hits the battlefield, it becomes day. So now we are in day. And it enters the battlefield ability triggers, therefore it will exile target creature and opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. So let's say it's going to exile a nice white dragon from Dungeons and Dragons. Brutal Qatar will remain in play until it dies or eventually it gets night. A small note here, once it's day or night, the game will be exactly one of those designations, day or night, going back and forth until the game ends. It can never return to being neither. How day can become night and transform our Brutal Qatar to Moonrange Brute, or how night can become day and transform back to Brutal Qatar. There are two ways for day-night to change. If it's day, as the turn begins and the previous turn active player didn't cast a spell last turn, it becomes night. Therefore, in my case, if my opponent didn't cast any spell, and let's say they didn't cast any spell because they want back their creature, when my turn begins, it becomes night, and Brutal Qatar transforms into Moonrange Brute. As Brutal Qatar leaves the battlefield and transforms into Moonrange Brute, my opponent will get his dragon. Similarly, if it's night, as the turn begins, if the previous turn active player cast 2 spells or more, last turn it becomes day. Therefore, I will play 2 spells in my turn so that when my opponent's turn starts, it will become day again. So let's say I'm going to play a creature and I'm going to shock my opponent. I have played 2 spells, therefore when my opponent's turn starts, it becomes day. When it's day again, Moonrange Brute will transform again into Brutal Qatar, and Brutal Qatar will exile again the dragon of my opponent. Some notes: as it becomes day, all double face cards with Nightbound transform to their DAYBOUND phase, and as it becomes night, all double face cards with DAYBOUND transform into Nightbound phases. In other words, these double face cards should always be in sync, no matter who controls them. What's more, permanent with DAYBOUND and NIGHTBOUND can transform in any other way. DAYBOUND NIGHTBOUND can also feature on Planeswalkers like Arlen the Peck's Hope, which, if it gets night, will transform into Arlen the Muse Fury. There are cards like the Celtus that can determine and transform day to night or night to day. DAYBOUND spells are all double face cards, and if it's day, each double face card with DAYBOUND and NIGHTBOUND will enter the battlefield with its DAYBOUND face up. If it's night, each of them will enter with the NIGHTBOUND face up. Note that this doesn't affect spells on stack, which means that if you cast the front part and put it on the stack, if it's resolved, if it's day, you will put the front side of the card. If it's night, you will put the back side of the card. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned something more about this new mechanic DAYBOUND, NIGHTBOUND. Leave a comment below what you think about these new werewolves in Innistrad Midnight Hunt, and here's the subscription button. Subscribe for my channel for more and more interesting videos about Magic the Gathering and the collectible world.